Very good evening. Online students, am I audible? Okay. So last class we were seeing the features of culture. So today there are certain other attributes that we have to see. The most important of one, that is organic and super organic. So let's see some other attributes. The first one is the culture has the attribute of overtness and covertness. So looking from the point of view of the observer, that is an outsider, there will be some aspects of culture which are overt, that is visible to the outsiders. Okay. You go and study some culture, you get to know family kaisi hai, marriage, how is the marriage, okay, or the kind of food or the dressing sense. So these are the overt aspects of the culture for an outsider. Then there are the hidden aspects. Okay, these aspects of culture are not visible to the outsider in the first go. For that, that person needs to go for participant observation. Not just participant observation, they might have to develop a very good rapport with the locals or the participant. Only then they get to know. And still, there are some aspects of the culture that will never be visible to the outsider. Okay, maybe something related to magic, something related to sorcery or witchcraft or all that stuff will never be visible. Or there are certain aspects, something related to sexual aspects or sexual training. It's a very personal and private affair. Very rare chance that it will be visible to the outsider. There is a case that is Kenneth Good, or another case that is of very relevant, wherein just to understand the sexual aspects of that culture, they married the local girl also. You know that Kenneth Good wala case, Yorima, and the case of very relevant also, wherein he married two tribal girls, one after other, Kosi and Leela. Okay, and he had children from them. So respectively, it's something. There is a institution called as youth dormitory, wherein the tribes are taught about their cultures, and specifically related to the sexual aspects. So here in youth dormitory, access is not given to the outsider. In fact, the tribes, they do not even talk about youth dormitory in front of an outsider. That's not a topic to be frequently discussed. So in such case, the only way you get to know about that aspect is by marrying a local girl or a tribal girl, which usually the anthropologists avoid to do that. There are very rare examples. One of them I told you, India, that is very relevant, and another we have already discussed, that is Kenneth Good, Yorima. So these are the two aspects. One is visible to the outsider, overt, and second, that is hidden to the outsider, that is the covert. Now, second case, culture is explicit and implicit. What does this mean? Here I am talking about with respect to the participant in the culture, not an outsider, but with respect to a participant. So there are some aspects of culture that are explicitly visible or known to all the members. Okay, and there are some aspects which are implicit, which are hidden, not known to every member. Okay, so remember the idea of culture universals and culture specialists. So here culture universal will be explicit. So सबको पता होगा, because everybody will be sharing that aspect of culture. While culture specialist is, or culture specialties are shared by a group of people. So they are not known to everyone. These are some aspects. So for example, हम लोग के culture के कई सारे aspects हैं. So something that everybody knows, but there are certain parts that we do not get the chance. It's not like hidden as if we are forbidden to study, but we need, or the moment we study it, the moment we get to know, it's like we become the specialist. So it's less implicit. But some aspects of culture, just because we are a participant, हम लोग उस culture में हैं, we are supposed to communicate, we are supposed to exchange language or perform certain status role relationships. So that aspect of culture will be known to all, and that can be understood by that basic personality idea, because that is shared by all. Basic personality, and that's why we are able to communicate in the society, live in society with a coherence, or that is what creates a collective consciousness in the minds of people practicing the same culture. So overt and covert with respect to the outsider, implicit and explicit with respect to the participant in the culture or insider. Next is culture has ethos and eidos. What is this ethos and eidos? Ethos means the emotional aspects of culture. So culture has an emotional flavor, you can say, or it charges the individual emotionally. So you are kind of identifying yourself with your culture. You feel proud with respect to your culture. That's why you are basically following that culture. There can be nobody who is not proud of his culture yet following it, or yet displaying his identity. There will always be some kind of resentment if that particular person is not feeling emotionally charged with respect to that culture. So there is a, you can say, inner emotion or emotion at the core that is present in the culture. Every culture has certain emotions. You can talk about that emotion in the terms of Apollonian genius and Dionysian genius. Okay, remember Ruth Benedict, Apollonian genius and Dionysian genius. So these are the two types of emotions she talks about. There can be a number of emotions that are related to various behaviors. And then eidos means the outward appearances. So there will be some internal emotions, and these emotions will appear in the form of certain cultural practices or behaviors. So it's more important to understand it in terms of a corporate house. Say एक office है, and in that office there is a certain emotion that is prevailing. Suppose if the employees are unhappy, in that case it will be externally visible that the environment is very much gloomy. Okay, nobody is talking to anybody. Everybody has a very dull face. They are not interacting properly with outsiders, giving them rude replies, something like this. So internal emotions definitely has some kind of outward appearances in the form of behavior, acts, customs, all that stuff. So every culture has some kind of emotions, and that will reflect itself, or that will have some kind of outward appearance. So here we have studied the case of Apollonian and Dionysian genius, wherein due to Dionysian genius how their behaviors were affected, or due to Apollonian genius how the behaviors of certain communities were affected. So this is the idea of ethos and eidos. Okay. Now, the most important, the debate of culture is super organic or organic and super organic. Outward appearance और कोई difference नहीं, मतलब visible है जो aspect that is overt. Yes, कोई difference नहीं है. Now, organic and super organic. Here, what the debate we have means bits and pieces में जगह जगह देखी हुई है. So organic means something that is created by human or that has life in it. Okay, and super organic means something which is over and above human beings. So it is said that the culture is organic. Why? Because humans have created it, right? And super organic because once created, it rises over and above human beings who have created it, and in turn controls human behavior. Okay. So this debate actually starts with Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer at his time So there was the prevalent idea what is called as great men theory. The great men theory says history is nothing but the study of the works of great men. So here this great men theory highlights 6 types of great men: divinity, prophet, rulers, man of letters, poets, and priest. Okay, so these are the 6 types of great men that great men theory talks about. Divinity means some supernatural being, koi avatar वगैरह आया होगा. Prophet, the messenger of God. Then rulers or the kings, man of letters, that is very good authors. And then poets, and finally the priest, like Shankaracharya और इन सब की पूजा करते हैं. या मानते हैं हम लोग. So these are the 6 types of great men, and history will be recording, or history will just be studying of these activities, the activities done by these kind of great men. Okay, now Herbert Spencer says these great men are nothing but the product of their society. The society in which these people were born created these great men. They were great because of the society in which they were born. इनके अंदर individually ऐसा कुछ नहीं था. They were not individually something unique, something extraordinary that they did something extraordinary that we are reading in the history, but it's the society of which they are a part of that made them great. So Herbert Spencer, he compared society with organism. If you remember organic analogy, right? So organism and society are more or less similar. So there are certain similar in terms of like both will be increasing in size and complexity and differentiation. That is, as the society will grow, it will become more complex. Complex as if say different kinds of institutions will be coming up, different kinds of social institutions, politics, economy, religion, and all that institutions will be rising up. In the same way, when we as an organism grow, we become more complex. So we start our life with a single cell zygote. Okay, then this zygote multiplies into say 10, 15 cells or 32 cells. Until that 32 cells, no specific differentiation is there. Okay, but later on, what will happen? This undifferentiated mass of cell, it will get some kind of job. Okay, one will be commanded to become the heart, the other will be commanded to become the brain, the other will be commanded to grow as a kidney, liver, lungs, something like this. So differentiation of cells will be happening, isn't it? So here, organism and society, they will be becoming complex, large, and differentiated as they grow. Okay, second thing is that life of society and life of the organism is greater than the life of the units. So society definitely lives far longer than the individuals who constitute it. In the same way, life of an individual, say as an individual or organism, my life is far greater than the life of a unit cell. Definitely, cells have general life of say 100 days, 120 days, but the normal organism or the normal individual lives average 60, 70 years compared to the cells. So this is the commonality. But he says that there is some difference also between organism and society, and that difference is that interconnectedness between the element in the organism is direct. So there is a direct connection between brain, heart, lungs, kidney, liver. There are arteries, there are some blood vessels, and certain other mechanisms through which the brain can command all the organs, right? But interconnectedness between the institutions of the society, it's more symbolic in nature. Okay, connected directly नहीं है, वो symbolically connected है. Okay, there is a clear cut neural pathways or certain arteries, blood vessels जो organs को connect करें, but that's not the case in societies, right? So it's more like symbolic in nature, connectedness. Next, he says that in organism, there only one element has consciousness. This is the most important difference. That's why this राम कहानी पूरी बताई है. In society, sorry, in organism, only one element has consciousness. That is the brain. उसी को consciousness है. All the parts do not have their own consciousness, right? But in society, all the units have consciousness. समझ में आ रहा है कि हमारी organism में सिर्फ एक जगह पे consciousness है, can think, that is brain. But in society, all the elements, every individual has consciousness, can think of itself. अब इस केस में, in order to make sure that the society works collectively, okay, in order to make sure that every individual works collectively, every individual works for the collective good, every individual has to think and act alike. Or just like the brain that is commanding and controlling the aspects of the organism, there should be something that should be commanding the behaviors of the unit cells. समझ में आ रहा है? In society. So in that case, the society has a superlative degree or superlative authority over the units of itself. ताकि everybody works for the collective good. And that's why society will make sure that every individual, every element works for the collective well-being of the society. Okay, and उसके लिए क्या जरूरत है? Everybody should think alike. So अगर culture होगा, तो culture will make sure that everybody should think alike. And this idea was taken by Durkheim, carried forward by Durkheim, who highlighted the idea in the form of social fact, way of acting, thinking, and behaving, believing that is external to us and has an element of coercion attached that makes us behave in a certain manner. So since there is a social fact, everybody will, due to the fear of coercion, behave similarly. And this social fact would create, since we are living in the same society, we follow the same social fact, and that would create collective consciousness. ठीक है, या उन सबका कॉन्शियसनेस है अपना. नहीं यही से तो उसने बोला कि सिंस सबकी कॉन्शियसनेस है, सबके पास अपनी कॉन्शियसनेस है, तो अब उसको रेगुलेट करने के लिए एक सेंट्रल एलिमेंट की जरूरत है. ओके, ताकि एवरीबॉडी वर्क्स इन द सेम मैनर. ऐसा नहीं, मतलब उसने इस डिफरेंस के कंटेक्स्ट में बताया कि अगर सबकी कॉन्शियसनेस है, अगर हर कोई अपने हिसाब से सोचने लग जाए, तो फिर इन दैट केस व्हाट विल हैपन? द सोसाइटी विल ब्रेक डाउन, एवरीबॉडी विल बी थिंकिंग अबाउट हिमसेल्फ. So इस वजह से there needs to be some regulating thing that would control the consciousness of every individual, every element. नहीं, ये बॉडी का पार्ट नहीं है. ब्रेन तो हमारी बॉडी पार्ट है ना, लेकिन वो उसके पास रिलेटिव रैंक है जो हमारी पूरी बॉडी को कंट्रोल कर रहा है. यहाँ पे बोला है कि इस सोसाइटी में थोड़ा सा डिफरेंस है कि हर किसी के पास अपना ब्रेन है. ओके, एवरीबॉडी हैज इट्स ओन ब्रेन, एवरीबॉडी हैज इट्स ओन कॉन्शियसनेस. अब उस केस में क्या करें? तो उसने बोला कि सोसाइटी एक कमांडिंग काइंड ऑफ अथॉरिटी पोज करती है, सो दैट एवरीबॉडी वर्क्स फॉर द कलेक्टिव वेलबींग. ओके, एंड दैट्स व्हाई कल्चर, और वहां पे ये सोसाइटी को सुपर ऑर्गेनिक बनाने की कोशिश कर रहा है. Getting this, मतलब at that point of time सोसाइटी और कल्चर में डिफरेंशिएशन नहीं कर रहे थे. So Herbert Spencer says that सोसाइटी सुपर ऑर्गेनिक है, सोसाइटी डायरेक्ट्स द इंडिविजुअल्स कॉन्शियसनेस और डायरेक्ट्स द इंडिविजुअल एक्शंस, एंड दैट शुड बी फॉर द वेलबींग ऑफ द एंटायर सोसाइटी. तो इंडिविजुअल एक्शन कौन डिसाइड कर रहा है? सोसाइटी. ओके, सो ये ग्रेट मैन कुछ नहीं है, दे आर जस्ट द प्रोडक्ट ऑफ द सोसाइटी. So here in this case, social fact, collective consciousness आएगी. So this was the debate that was going outside anthropology. Now Kroeber and Sapir, Edward Sapir, they brought this debate into anthropology with respect to culture. So Kroeber, he says that what we are studying, our anthropology is a unique subject because we have unique object to study, and that unique object is nothing but culture. So he says that man is composed of two things, or two elements are there. The first one is the organic substance, that is this body, organic substance, and second is the blank tablet. So there is a blank tablet inside us, and that blank tablet is just like a memory card, you can say, or you can say the internal memory jo bhi hai, and that's completely blank when the person is born. And the kind of operating system that you put into that blank tablet, the man starts or the machine starts behaving in that manner. So वहाँ पे machine की कोई consciousness नहीं है. Machine do not have the discretion to decide how he or she is going to behave. This organic substance is a kind of slave of what is written on the blank tablet. Getting this idea? कि आपने जो भी operating system डाल दिया कंप्यूटर में, आपने Unix डाला, Linux डाला, Microsoft Windows डाला या फिर MS DOS डाला, whatever you have put in, the computer will behave accordingly. You will have. So in the same way, we also have an organic substance and the blank tablet. And society puts whatever, or society writes something on the blank tablet. So we have certain Hindi metaphors also, कोरा कागज है. So that is how you write it on that कोरा कागज. The person is supposed to behave like this. Or we have scholars like जो Kroeber के followers थे बाद में Margaret Mead. So they also suggested cultural determinism. Culture will determine the personality. So gender roles कैसे होंगे, that will be dependent on how they are socialized. There is no role of the body. So whatever our personality is, howsoever we behave, that depends completely on the culture. Okay. So how our culture trains us. So here this is the idea that was given by Kroeber. Now Kroeber says, just to highlight this fact, the culture is super organic. He says that there are certain inventions or discoveries that have happened similarly or simultaneously in different groups. Okay, so he talks about like theories of evolution that was given by Darwin and Wallace. Then phone was discovered by Graham Bell and Elisha Gray. So these two people discovered or invented telephone at the same time. Then oxygen was discovered by Joseph Priestley and Scheele almost at the same time. Calculus was invented by Leibniz and Newton at the same time. So बोले कि if this is only because of genius, individual genius, then why such kind of important inventions happened simultaneously in different cultures? It's because the genius is nothing but a product of culture or the civilization. So जिस culture में आपको वही decide कर रहा है कि what new ideas it will accept. The idea of configuration we have talked about already. That culture will decide what kind of new elements will be accepted here, what kind of new ideas will be accepted there. Else वो culture में अगर fit नहीं बैठा तो that ideas will never be accepted or tolerated there. So here culture is deciding whatever behavior that we do or whatever we will discover or whatever we will invent is dependent on the culture, not the individual. So genius is not that of the individual but the product, or it's a product of the culture or civilization to which the individual belongs. Now the next scholar is Leslie White. He also puts in the same idea with the term supra-biological. Culture being supra-biological in nature. That is, once created, it rises over and above the individuals. Okay. So what is? He also says that the evolution of culture is something that is inevitable in nature. Culture to evolve करेगा with time. It definitely will do. But what will be the new evolution, or who will invent and when will it happen? It cannot be predicted. Who will do it? We don't know. But होगा ये sure है. And इसी के context में he suggested that yes, this Darwin, Wallace, whosoever did evolution or theory of evolution, or whosoever invented several kind of technologies and all that stuff, they were nothing but the product of culture, and they invented because the culture was at that stage that it could. The next stage was supposed to happen like this. And these people, even if they would have died as an infant, बच्चे होके ही मर जाते, तो भी ये cultural evolution होता. It would have for sure happened. We would have definitely got theories of evolution and the same time calculus at the same time, even if these people would have died. And secondly, he says these people would have been able to do nothing if they would have born as a swine herders. So here he talks about the king of Egypt, one king of Egypt. Maybe I might have told you the story of this. So he talks about the story of a king of Egypt. He says that this king developed or is credited to bring monotheism in Egypt. तो बोले कि वो किंग में ऐसा कुछ नहीं था, nothing unique or nothing special in that king. It only happened because Egyptian culture was ready for this idea, and that's why next stage of evolution was monotheism only. And इसी वजह से and coincidentally it was during that particular king's time that it happened. So it's nothing related to that unique personality or something like that, but only and only the culture will be deciding the next stage क्या होगा. So this is the idea supporting superorganic, and we have discussed it multiple times. Now the criticism. So there are two major scholars who criticize it. The first one is Alexander Goldenweiser. So here he says, why are we talking about culture being superorganic or humans, individual having no agency? He says the reason is that it's because of the nature of anthropological studies. We have been always studying single civilizations or single cultures, ethnographic studies कर रहे हैं हम, and that's why we have always focused on that particular culture only. And we, in that particular way of study, we actually ignore or intentionally ignore certain aspects that were present and affecting the behavior of the individual, but not a part of their culture. ठीक है? So क्योंकि हम एक single culture को study कर रहे थे, and that's why we were intentionally ignoring something that was outside that culture, but affecting the behavior of that individual. So he says that individual is not merely a product of civilization. They are concrete and historical. Concrete and historical means, concrete means they have their own individual personalities, and historical means that is created by certain unique historical experiences of the individual. हम सबके अपने अपने experiences, rather than being in the same society, we have different experiences. Okay, and that's why we have developed a unique individual identity or personality, and that is because of our unique historical experiences. So whenever we innovate something, whenever we create something, we inject our uniqueness into that object. It might be that we have been educated or been a part of that culture, we innovated it. but while innovating something we inject some kind of our uniqueness. अब इसका reason क्या था, why he is talking something distinct? He always means most of the anthropologists when they go to some field works, so they usually have some informant and they just break the contact with the informant as the field work ends. As simple. But he used to be in touch with his informants even after the field work. वो उनके टच में रहता था और he used to write about the obituaries, write the obituaries of the dead informants. जब भी इनके कोई informant की death हो जाए तो he used to write the obituaries about them. Obituaries means शोक संदेश लिखते थे. Okay, so he used to be in touch and on the basis of which he suggested that this person became informant because he was somewhat different from rest of the people. ये कुछ अलग थे मतलब बाकी लोगों से. That's why his thoughts were different, his actions were different and he was unique. Not merely a product of culture but somewhat unique. He had the same belief, still behaved differently. On the basis of which he says the individual definitely has some unique personality which is shaped by his unique historical experiences. And whenever innovative actions happen, the individual will definitely inject some of his uniqueness or innovativeness into that product. Okay, और जो कि uniquely उसी की होगी. Next one is Edward Sapir. This is the major debate. So between Kroeber and Sapir. So Kroeber says that anthropology is unique because we are studying a unique object, that is culture. But Edward Sapir says that the anthropology is a discipline not because we are studying a unique object, but because we are studying something in a unique manner. It's because of the manner that we are studying a particular topic, it becomes a unique object. Means हमारा जो फील्ड वर्क करने का तरीका है, पार्टिसिपेंट ऑब्जर्वेशन है, ये तरीकों की वजह से एंथ्रोपोलॉजी यूनिक है, बट नॉट बिकॉज वी आर स्टडीइंग कल्चर. एंड ही सेज दैट द ऑब्जेक्ट कैन नॉट बी यूनिक बिकॉज इट्स नॉट एन ऑब्जेक्ट इन इटसेल्फ. दैट मींस कि आप किसको कल्चर समझ रहे हो. एन एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट किसको कल्चर समझ रहा है, दैट डिपेंड्स अपॉन और दैट वेरीज फ्रॉम एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट टू एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट. समबडी माइट बी स्टडीइंग द सेम सोसाइटी बट मैरिज को स्टडी करेगा. somebody might find religious more important, somebody might find economy as more important. Okay, so इस तरीके से what you are studying or what you understand culture depends or varies from person to person. आप सपोज करो कि 5 people from this group they are supposed to study some particular community और आप लोगों को randomly भेज दिया जाए. Just you go there and write about their culture. Whatever you see you write about them, write about it, culture के बारे में. Will 5 people be producing the same account? आपको तो एक ही चीज स्टडी करने के बोला गया था कल्चर को, but why are you not producing the same account? Somebody will notice something which is not noticed by somebody else. If culture was a unique object, discrete object, तो हर कोई तो almost same ही चीज लिख रहा होता. Suppose if you are supposed to study an elephant and you can see that elephant, और आपसे बोला जाए कि elephant के features लिखो, more or less everybody will be writing the same thing, isn't it? Yes or no? That means an elephant is a definite unique object. उसके specific features हैं, सब कोई देख सकता है वो चीज को. But culture is something a constructed object. और जब object ही specific नहीं है, तो उस केस में how you can say that the discipline is studying a unique object, and when the object is not specific, how can you say that it's science? Because the phenomena is different from person to person. So when we say कि culture is super organic, Kroeber when he says culture is super organic, Sapir says that he's saying that the culture has laws of its own. उसके खुद के अपने कानून हैं. Okay, it will behave as per its own laws, and anthropology is the science whose aim is to discover those laws. ठीक है, पर सपीर ने बोला कि ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है, because if there is law, there has to be some unique phenomena, isn't it? और जब phenomena unique नहीं है, तो then there is no law, and when there is no law, there is no science like anthropology. So it's all dependent upon whether one considers culture as a unique object or a specific discrete object or not. According to Sapir, ऐसा कोई object है ही नहीं, and जब कोई ऐसा object नहीं है, तो इसके कोई laws भी नहीं हो सकते, and that's why it can never be super organic. Okay, individual do have agencies, individual do think, and we think, we critically analyze, and then we act. Okay, is it clear? सपीर वाला. तो सपीर सेज सिंपल सी बात है कि कल्चर अगर 10 लोग स्टडी करने जा रहे हैं तो 10 लोगों के लिए अलग-अलग कल्चर है. सो मतलब कल्चर कोई सिंगुलर ऑब्जेक्ट नहीं है जिसके कुछ स्पेसिफिक फीचर्स हैं. कल्चर इज व्हाट वी हैव कंस्ट्रक्टेड. मींस आपके कल्चर को अगर मैं स्टडी करने जाऊं कोई और जाए तो आपके कल्चर के बारे में कुछ अलग-अलग लिखेगा. दैट मींस आई हैव कंस्ट्रक्टेड योर कल्चर फ्रॉम माय पर्सपेक्टिव, समबडी एल्स हैज कंस्ट्रक्टेड योर कल्चर फ्रॉम हिज पर्सपेक्टिव. इसका मतलब क्या है कि कल्चर जो है इट्स नॉट अ ऑब्जेक्टिव थिंग, इट्स नॉट अ स्पेसिफिक थिंग, बट समथिंग दैट इज द सोशल कंस्ट्रक्ट जो हम लोगों ने खुद बनाया आपको देख के. अब इसका मतलब कोई ऐसा कोई फिनोमेना ही नहीं है स्पेसिफिक. अब जब कोई स्पेसिफिक फिनोमेना नहीं है तो उसके लॉज कैसे होंगे? आप कोई भी physical laws of motion करके देखो, that means ball is moving forward, ball is moving, something like this. तो वहाँ पे you are studying the relative motion, the same phenomena, isn't it? And वहाँ पे आप laws लगा रहे हो and it works. हर जगह universally applicable है because everybody is seeing the same thing. But here in this case, जब वो object ही clear नहीं है कि किसको आप study कर रहे हो, in that case, how can it have a law of its own? Okay. So this is the idea of superorganic. क्या? Superorganic का idea बोलता है कि individual की agency नहीं है. और इंडिविजुअल की एजेंसी नहीं है, दैट मींस कल्चर अपने हिसाब से बिहेव करेगा, कल्चर के खुद के लॉज हैं. वंस क्रिएटेड इट राइजेस ओवर एंड अबव द वन हु हैव क्रिएटेड इट, एंड द प्रोग्रेस द चेंज इन द कल्चर विल बी डिसाइडेड बाय द कल्चर इटसेल्फ. इंडिविजुअल नहीं डिसाइड कर पाएगा उसको, तो एक डायरेक्शन में वो जिस डायरेक्शन मूव करेगा. सो देयर इज सम स्पेसिफिक लॉज दैट द कल्चर विल फॉलो, और उस लॉ मींस इफ देयर इज सम स्पेसिफिक लॉ देन इन दैट केस जो उस लॉ को स्टडी करेगा दैट विल बी अ साइंस, एंड दैट साइंस इज एंथ्रोपोलॉजी अकॉर्डिंग टू क्रोबर. ठीक है. एडवर्ड सपीर ने बोला कि जब इवेंट ही क्लियर नहीं है तो उस केस में उसके लॉ कैसे होंगे? तो मतलब लॉ नहीं है तो दैट मींस वो रैंडमली बिहेव कर रहा है. ओके, और तो जब इवेंट क्लियर नहीं है तो लॉ कैसे होंगे? लॉ नहीं है तो फिर साइंस कैसे होगा? Okay, so here he is saying, although he is saying that individual की agency है, but he is criticizing at the level of he assuming that culture being superorganic behaves in a particular manner, has a science of its own. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. है बिल्कुल सब्जेक्टिविटी है, और सब्जेक्टिविटी है तो उसके खुद के लॉज कभी नहीं हो पाएंगे. Okay, just write this. Organic and superorganic. The debate, or sorry, the term superorganic was first used by Herbert Spencer. The term superorganic was first used by Herbert Spencer. According to Spencer, human society or culture is superorganic. human society or culture is superorganic. It exists at a complexity. It exists at a complexity higher than physical things. Exist at a complexity higher than physical things or biological organisms. It exists over and beyond the individuals that make it up. Over and beyond the individuals that make it up. Next paragraph. Spencer was against the great men theory, which said history of world is nothing but the biography of great men. Nothing but the biography of great men. According to Spencer, great men were merely the product of their social environment. Next paragraph. Spencer saw similarity between society and organism. Spencer saw similarity between society and organism. In bracket you can write organic analogy. However, there were certain differences as well. Right? First difference: interconnectedness of element in organic world is direct. Interconnectedness of element in organic world is direct, while in superorganic world is symbolic. Second, the level of consciousness of element in organic world is present at brain, means और एक ही level of consciousness है, while in the superorganic world all units have consciousness. Next point: since all units have brain, they all should reflect together. Every one of these units should work together for well-being of whole. This whole. Okay. Next, आप heading डालो Durkheim. Revised this idea and presented it in the form of social fact. The social fact creates collective consciousness in the society. And a uniform behavioral pattern. It takes away the agency of the individual. Okay. Next, Kroeber. See, I'm dictating the entire debate, but it's very less probable that you will be able to write this entire Ramkatha वहाँ पे exam में. It's only for your understanding. In exam, only what they want to know is Kroeber. क्योंकि anthropology में Kroeber ही debate लेके आया. And second is the criticism by Goldenweiser and Sapir. That is the most important thing. ये आपके समझने के लिए है कि out of the blue why he's talking all this stuff. So Spencer, Durkheim, and then Kroeber. So that's why Kroeber is credited to bring this debate into anthropology. According to Kroeber, a human being comprises two aspects of existence. First, the organic substance in bracket biology. And second, the tablet on which the culture is written. Genius is not due to inherent faculty, but due to civilization or culture. In order to support his idea, Kroeber highlighted parallel chain of inventions, parallel chain of inventions happening around the world, parallel chain of inventions happening around the world. For example, theory of evolution, theory of evolution was given simultaneously by Darwin and Wallace, by Darwin and Wallace. Telephone was invented simultaneously, telephone was invented simultaneously by Graham Bell and Elisha Gray. Elisha Gray, etc. According to Kroeber, culture has a life of its own. According to Kroeber, culture has a life of its own and unique laws that would govern its behavior, or that would, sorry, govern its behavior, that would predict its behavior. Okay. So right, next heading, Leslie White labels culture as supra-biological, labels culture as supra-biological. Development of culture, development of culture, like development of technology or medicine, like development of technology or medicine, is an evolutionary process, is an evolutionary process. This statement is very important. आप इसको underline कर लें. New forms grow out of, new forms grow out of preceding forms. That means a preceding stage is necessary for the new form to come. जब वो stage आएगा उसके बाद ही नया stage आ पाएगा. We may not be able to predict, we may not be able to predict the name of an inventor, the name of an inventor, or when another innovation will occur, when other innovation will occur, but the fact that such innovation will occur is predictable, because of inevitability of cultural evolution, inevitability of cultural evolution. The great man is nothing but, great man is nothing but the neural medium, the neural medium through which an important synthesis of culture takes place, through which an important synthesis of culture takes place. But had they been reared as swine herders, had they been reared as swine herders, greatness wouldn't have found them, greatness wouldn't have found them. Okay? So this is the idea of superorganic criticism. जहां पे भी लगे कि नोट्स नहीं डिटेक्ट कराने ना, बोल, आई विल बी मोर देन हैप्पी. Alexander Golden Weiser, first criticism, Alexander Golden Weiser. It is true that everything in universe has a cause, but if we focus on anthropology of single civilization, we overlook a variety of factors, which we have chosen not to study, yet which shape the actions of individuals, ठीक है, कल्चर के बियॉन्ड भी बहुत सारे ऐसे फैक्टर्स हैं. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, he says, that is Golden Weiser says, individuals are not merely the product of civilization, they are, in single quote, concrete and historical. Their lives are shaped by unique set of factors at play, in historical moment in which they lived. When an individual makes an innovation, he injects some particularity in it, Next point. According to Golden Weiser, anthropologists believe that individuals lack an agency. That individuals lack an agency because we lack rich account of individual human lives in primitive society. We lack rich account of individual human lives in primitive societies. He had that rich account because he used to stay in contact with the informants, and that's why, and he used to write their obituaries also. तो उसको लगता था कि ये बाकियों से अलग है. Okay. Next, Sapir, Edward Sapir. So Edward Sapir shares Golden Weiser's view. Edward Sapir shares Golden Weiser's view. He believes anthropology is distinct because it has a distinct outlook. Because it has a distinct outlook to study culture. In bracket, right? Kroeber believed anthropology distinct है क्योंकि it studied distinct object or unique object. So Kroeber के हिसाब Kroeber या पूरा statement लिख लो bracket में. Kroeber believed anthropology is distinct. Kroeber believed anthropology is distinct because it has a unique object to study. Because it has a unique object to study. ठीक है? Close the bracket. So according to Sapir, superorganic is an abstraction. Superorganic is an abstraction, not a reality. Anthropology cannot have a unique object to study because the object of study is constructed by anthropologists. The object of study is constructed by anthropologists. Principle of selection is involved in filtering the reality. That means selectively आप choose करते हो क्या study करना है क्या नहीं करना है and all that stuff. ठीक है. Last line. Since culture cannot be a real thing, superorganic or the idea of superorganic also cannot be real. ठीक है. So अब question आता है कि what's the conclusion then? Have we reached to some conclusion? Have we? Or means what do you feel? Do we have an agency or are we just the slaves of the culture that we follow? हाँ? Both कैसे हो जाएगा यार? एक ही होगा. हाँ? You have an agency. Tell me one thing, मतलब consciously दिल पे हाथ रखे कि जो आपने खुद की एजेंसी से खुद डिसाइड किया and culture did not influence your behavior in that case, which you feel that you did something which is not a product of your culture. आप सब लोग सोच सकते हो. You have all the time. हाँ? Any one thing you did, but something where your culture has not played any role. Your silence speaks it all. You might not be able to find actually any single thing कि जहाँ पे आप बोलोगे कि वो आपका culture responsible नहीं था उसके. In a way है तो बताओ please. In a way or other, it's almost means अगर इस बारे में बात की जाए तो in a way or other, it's more or less kind of belief. ये तो मतलब एक समझ लो कि एक ऐसी debate हो जाती है. If any renowned figure says this, in that case आपका मतलब the entire humanity will be like demoralized. यार कैसी बात करते हैं यार हम लोग मतलब culture के slaves हो गए हैं, something like that. But some way or other, this is more or less true. ठीक है. और इसी वजह से they had to take the help of means Kroeber and Leslie White. They had to take the help of some unique individuals. मतलब एक तरीके से अगर हम commoners हैं तो वो तो Sapir और Golden Weiser भी मान रहे हैं that if we are a common person, not the ones who have given some innovations or contribution or something like that, तो उस केस में तो हमारी खुद की कुछ एजेंसी है ही नहीं. वो तो even the critique of this idea, they are accepting this. They are only talking about those individuals who have done something extraordinary. बाकी केस में तो हमारी seriously कोई भी एजेंसी नहीं है. More or less we are just the slaves of culture. Okay, but don't be demoralized. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. We do have a free will, and we are not the mute spectators of culture. We do have a critical reasoning system that is well functional, and here you can understand it by an act of altruism, the act of sacrifices that we do. Okay, so if it would have not been our critical agencies, or if it would not have been our free will, then we would never had this courage of sacrificing. A soldier sacrificing his life for the nation. अब जब वो मर जाएगा उसके बाद उसको परमवीर चक्र मिल जाए कुछ भी मिल जाए वो क्या करेगा उसका? Okay, how is he going to feel happy about it? But that is his free will to decide whether he wants to sacrifice his life or not, or whether he will or not. Okay, we have certain free will. Okay, अगर आप लोग यूपीएससी की तैयारी करने आए हो तो yes, there is some culture involved, but many of you were having very well-paying jobs, and many of your parents might have stopped you or asked you not to leave this well-paying job because आगे बहुत ज़्यादा खतरा है. You have everything or you have nothing, something like this. Okay, so it's very risky, but you still decide or you still dare to take the risk. Many of you might have passed from IITs or BITS Pilani or maybe some very prestigious institutes and have bagged a very good package, which might be a dream package or something that you might have thought when you would have entered the college. But once you got that job, you got that daring to leave that job. Most of the people might not have that daring to leave that job. So that is definitely an agency. Not everybody can do that. You had the dare, you did it. और या फिर आपने बहुत कुछ और स्टेक पे रख के यूपीएससी की तैयारी शुरू की होगी. तो कहीं ना कहीं कल्चर तो इन्वॉल्व है फॉर श्योर, इसमें कुछ ना कुछ कल्चर का रोल है, बट मीन्स लीविंग द जॉब इज योर फ्री विल और द एजेंसी, बट लीविंग द जॉब फॉर व्हाट पर्पस, इसमें कल्चर का रोल है. ओके, you wanted something that will be appreciated more by the culture. You could have gone for research, you could have gone for PhDs, or you could have gone for MBA or something like that, or you decided to prepare for civil services. But यहाँ पे जहाँ जॉब छोड़े थे वहाँ पे तो खुद की एजेंसी थी, वहाँ पे खुद की डेयरिंग थी, एंड यहाँ पे अपनी फ्री विल काम कर रहा था. एंड मेनी पीपल माइट बी स्टॉपिंग यू नॉट टू लीव द जॉब कि मत करो. आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट दोस जिनकी जॉब नहीं थी. So these people definitely had that daring. तो वहाँ पे free will है. So we are not merely a mute spectator or a passive recipient of the culture. We do have free will. Yes, culture definitely shapes our decision, but not has a determinant factor or not acts as a determinant. कि मैं पूरा का पूरा हम लोग को कंट्रोल कर रहा है, ऐसा नहीं होगा. And that's a balanced view only. कि रोल तो प्ले करता है, but determinant नहीं है. So this is the idea of culture being super organic. Next, can we not say that it was also determined by culture to sacrifice his life due to patriotism in society to defend culture and country? Even the will to leave the job is determined by the culture, by case studies prevalent in culture. भाई तो आप मान लो कि you are the slave of culture. नहीं मतलब सीरियसली, isn't patriotism developed since childhood by watching surroundings? यार ऐसा तो कुछ नहीं है. देखो, टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट, आज के टाइम पे जो सोल्जर्स रिक्रूट हो रहे हैं, टेल मी हैड दे बीन द सोल्जर्स कि बेसिकली अगर उनके पास आईटी की डिग्रीज होती, हाँ, बट देयर आर जो आगे मेजर और इन सब की रैंक पे रिक्रूट होते हैं, दे हैव द फ्री विल, दे कैन, मतलब वो कई सारे ऐसे लोग हैं जो बहुत रॉयल फैमिली से बिलोंग करते हैं. ओके, दे बट दे हैव एन एंटायर हेरिटेज. और मे बी कई सारे लोग जॉब छोड़ने, मींस आप लोगों के कॉलेज में से देयर माइट बी सम पीपल हु माइट हैव गॉन टू नेवी और एसएसबी वगैरह निकाला होगा. अब उस केस में they might be a part of prestigious institutions but still went for it. Why not everybody? अगर कल्चर होता तो everybody would have moved in that direction, but that's not the case. People are choosing diverse sections, people are moving into diverse directions. It's only because of their free will. आपके घर में हर कोई एक जैसा काम क्यों नहीं कर रहा? It's because we have a free will. Why not everybody is pursuing for civil services? Because they have the free will. ठीक है, डेफिनेटली कुछ ना कुछ तो फ्री विल है. हाँ, कल्चर इन्वॉल्व है, ऐसा नहीं कि कल्चर का रोल जीरो हो जाता है, बट थिंग इज कि ऐसा भी नहीं है कि कल्चर ही 100% हमारे डिसीजन को शेप कर रहा है. हमारी खुद की कॉन्शियसनेस इज आल्सो एक्टिंग देयर. ओके, योर कल्चर सेज you should be, means we are a part of patriarchal society. Let's accept this fact that your culture says that you should be taking dowry after getting selected. और यूपी में रेट है आईएएस का 2 करोड़ रुपए. सो हाँ देखो, so the rate is there, but will you follow the culture? Most of you might not. I'm saying most of you because I believe that some kind of education that you get or the transition that happens during this phase might definitely, you might dare certain cultural practices. Okay, so there automatically आपकी एजेंसी काम कर रही है. You will not accept that 2 करोड़ आप बोलोगे कि यार 2 करोड़ से क्या होगा, तो मैं एक साइन से कमा लूंगा, तो मुझे आपके 2 करोड़ की जरूरत नहीं है. Okay, so this might be, means there will be several instances which after becoming civil servant or after basically this education you will challenge जहाँ पे आपकी जो well established cultural practices हैं वहाँ पे उसको ignore करोगे, you will not follow it. Okay, now the next topic is, and just to tell you ये topic बता because we have already talked about this, function of culture. Okay, so we have already talked about what are the functions of culture. Malinowski and Brown. So Malinowski talks about three levels of needs: biological needs to satisfy करना, derived needs to satisfy करना, and integrative needs to satisfy करना. And Brown talks about the function is to maintain the existing social structure. Now the culture is not only functional but also dysfunctional. ठीक है, and this dysfunction is the reason for or explains the reason for cultural changes. ठीक है, आप माइलोस्की के तीनों लेवल को बताओगे, आप कल्चर के सारे फंक्शंस को बता सकते हो कि हाउ इट इज सैटिस्फाइंग द बायोलॉजिकल और मटेरियलिस्टिक नीड्स, एंड देन सोशल नीड्स एज ए पॉलिटिकल, इकोनॉमिक, सोशल कंट्रोल एंड एजुकेशन लेवल, एंड देन एस्थेटिक नीड्स और सुपर स्ट्रक्चर, बिलीफ, कस्टम्स, मॉरल्स, वैल्यूज थ्रू इंटीग्रेटिव एस्पेक्ट्स. ओके, एंड देन द यूनिटी, सोशल कोहेशन दैट इज ब्रॉट बाय कल्चर, एंड देयर विल बी dysfunction. So dysfunction as if culture might not be equally functional for all, or there might be certain aspects of culture which might be dysfunctional. Maybe it was functional in some case, but now the environment has changed. In that case, some aspects of culture might have to adjust. So for example, joint family, this is an aspect of culture. Now this was functional when the economy was a family enterprise. आपके पास एग्रीकल्चर था, फैमिली वाले ही लेबर थे, फैमिली वेयर द प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर, एंड व्हाटएवर द surplus you had that would be traded for something else. But now industrialization happened, and when industrialization happened, you definitely need more mobility, and in case of more mobility, you cannot move with the entire joint family. Here, the joint family in the present context of industrialization is dysfunctional, and since it's dysfunctional, definitely it will have to change or reform itself, and that would lead to disintegration of joint families into nuclear families. And क्योंकि mobility चाहिए तो छोटी families के साथ mobility becomes easy. Or due to education, patriarchy was before education, before women empowerment, patriarchy was a stable way wherein women basically controlled the household work and men was controlling the economy, right? But now the woman has got empowered, she got educated, she is also contributing economically. In such a case, patriarchy as an institution or patriarchal institutions, they are being challenged because of the dysfunctionality of them. Okay, so culture has certain functions, and there are certain aspects they are dysfunctional as well, and this dysfunctionality would be the reason for cultural changes. Now the next topic, process of culture change. So the first process is innovation. So new things will get invented. Okay, that is, so we have read this in the theory of evolution that people will invent as and when the crisis arises or the need arises, they will come up with some new cultural solutions to a particular problem. So this is the first way to bring cultural change, that is innovate करो, कुछ नया cultural practices लेके आओ. Second is diffusion. In case of diffusion, we know that we will be not innovation but imitation. आप कहीं से copy कर रहे हो. Okay. The third type of cultural change is repressive changes. Okay. Here repressive change में हम क्या देखेंगे? That here there is coercion involved, and in that coercion or in there is a power equation between the parties involved in cultural exchanges, and there is one culture that is subordinate, the other culture is superior, and that would lead to some form of cultural change. So these are of two types: acculturation and transculturation. ठीक है. Then another type of cultural change is, we'll talk, actually my syllabus में बस यही दोनों है. ठीक है. But this is the entire table that will make you understand the sense of it. Next one is cultural loss. Up till here we were talking about some addition of new elements in the culture, but here there is cultural loss. Some elements get vanished or some elements wipe out from the culture, and the last is ethnocide. The entire culture wipes out or dies. So this is a kind of continuum. Okay, some new innovations, some new through copying, then repressive change through force, and then loss of culture, and the entire culture goes away or becomes extinct. है? Environment के कारण change हो. हाँ ठीक है. तो वो change इन्हीं में से किसी टाइप का होगा ना. या तो वो कुछ innovate कर लेंगे, या तो कहीं से copy कर लेंगे. Environment change होने की वजह से crisis आ रही है, right? हाँ, repressive change I'll talk about it. किसको? Degeneration. Degeneration is a contextual term with respect to progress. ठीक है. मतलब वो एक लेवल पे बोला है कि प्रोग्रेस कर रहा है, दूसरे लेवल पे वो बोला है कि बैक साइड मूव कर रहा है, इट्स नॉट मूविंग इन वन डायरेक्शन बट किसी डायरेक्शन में मूव कर सकता है. तो उस कंटेक्स्ट में आ गया ये. हाँ जी. और कल्चर स्पेशलिस्ट के लिए जो उन्होंने यूज किया था, हाँ वो कर सकते हैं. मतलब वो लोग इनोवेट करेंगे, मींस दैट एलीट्स जो होते हैं. हाँ लेकिन नहीं, वो न्यू फीचर्स को वही लेके आएंगे. तो बेसिकली ही टॉक अबाउट व्हाटएवर इनोवेशन विल हैपन, दैट विल बी ब्रॉट अबाउट बाय दिस माइनॉरिटी एलीट्स ओनली. यस, हो सकता है. सो लेट्स सी द रिप्रेसिव चेंजेस. So repressive changes are those changes which involves use of coercion. Okay, यहाँ पे element of coercion is there. Power equation between the parties that are exchanging the cultural elements is there. Power equation है उनके बीच. And the first form of repressive change is acculturation. So here this acculturation is the kind of cultural change that is experienced whenever there are two parties who are in close contact with each other, and one is superior, the other is subordinate. Okay, and अब आपको ये तो समझ में आ रहा होगा कि कौन absorb करेगा? The subordinate, and superior will coerce its culture on the subordinates. ठीक है, power equation है. So acculturation can be usually due to violent interactions also, or due to violent interface between the superior and the subordinate parties. ठीक है, and the superior will be coercing the subordinates to follow its own culture. But ये acculturation के चार types होते हैं, और या फिर you can say that there are 4 degrees of acculturation, and you can just draw this flow chart. So if the attitude towards retaining one's own culture is positive, that means वो अपना culture भी retain करना चाहते हैं, and attitude towards learning other culture is also positive, then that kind of acculturation is called as integration, or what is called as, it's also called as biculturalism. So here the although the hierarchy is there, but the coercion might be very minimalistic or insignificant in nature. ठीक है, hierarchy definitely is there. ये culture ज़्यादा progressed है, ये culture is more developed in technology, and there is but the other culture, means for example Indians, so we are following European culture or American culture. Definitely hierarchy is there in terms of technological progress, in terms of the innovativeness, in terms of education. We want to follow their model. Okay, या कॉलेज में या कई सारी चीजों में we want to follow business ethics और corporate management, whatever it is. जैसे कि MBA है, so MBA is a program that is not a specific skills, बल्कि कुछ ऐसा कोई प्रोग्राम नहीं था. ये तो बस US की culture hegemony है, that the program of MBA became universal, something that is a product of USA to the world. बीटेक में तो फिर भी आप कुछ स्पेसिफिक चीजें सीख रहे होते हो. MBA में क्या है? HR कौन सी वो नौकरी को क्या सिखा रहे हैं बेसिकली, कि लोगों से बात कैसे करनी है आपको अपने ऑफिस में, एंड उसके ऊपर प्रॉपर कोर्सेज हैं. ओके, दिस इज कंप्लीटली मींस नॉट टू मींस जो लोग MBA वाले हैं, प्लीज डोंट गेट ऑफेंडेड. It's completely a hegemony of US. It's a gift of US to the entire world. ये MBA एक universal program बन गया, and not just a program, but something that is highly kind of सबसे ज़्यादा fee है इस program की, and one of the one that gets highest remuneration. कि आप MBA कर लो तो आपको सबसे बड़ी नौकरी भी लग जाएगी. In both the ways, it's one of the one most sought after program. So this is a very good example of integration, biculturalism, wherein we Indians, we are following the culture of US, Europe. At the same time, we want to retain our own culture. That is a case of integration. Okay, second is the opposite. That is attitude towards learning other culture is positive, and attitude towards keeping one's own culture is negative. This is called as assimilation. So assimilation में there is one phenomena which is called as translatization. So lower caste will try to remove all the stigmas that were attached to his or her caste group, and how they will try to do so? They will remove any identity features that would locate the person's caste, means yeah, that would make other person identify other person's caste. Surname change कर देंगे. Okay, food habits will be changed, dresses will be changed, सब कुछ, every particular identity of that low caste that would bring in some kind of stigma will be removed, and instead they would start imitating the behavior of higher caste, okay, in order to be recognized as high caste. Okay, or you can say conspicuous consumption is a case of assimilation, okay, wherein all the features that show you as of lower class, गरीब दिखा रहे हैं आपको, आप वो सब हटा दोगे, okay, and will basically try to get all those features like phone, kapde, hairstyle, bikes and all those material objects just to project your status as high class. Ab high class culture, even the language will also change, not just the language but also the pronunciation or accent will also change. See Priyanka Chopra, अंग्रेजी बदल गई बहन की. So what happened? जब वो वहां पे when she went to US, actually, so when she went to US, आपने उनकी स्पीच सुनी होगी, how she used to say in India something like Didi ji, and then later on when she went to US, her accent completely changed, and as if, so this is a case of complete assimilation, that is removing every traces of one's own identity and kind of behaving as if like of the superior culture, the coercive culture, and it's more, the coercion is involved because if she does not do it, in such case what will happen, she might be ousted from that culture, she will not be accepted in that culture. Then the third case, that is attitude towards keeping one's own culture is positive and towards learning other culture is negative. Here it will lead to isolation. So there will be sentinelese ka case. So they want their own culture to be intact, and that's why they will make sure that no other culture or no other cultural being should be coming in contact with them, and if anybody comes near, in that case usko maar denge. So they take it as an offensive act कि कोई भी उनके बाहर वाला should not try to enter into their island no matter what happens, and that is the idea of isolation. And finally the last one, that is you don't want to learn new culture and you don't either want to learn the or retain your own culture. That is what is called as marginalization. So here a very classic case is that of the Dalits or untouchables, wherein they do not want to imitate the higher caste culture, nor do they want to retain the job that has been provided to them by their own culture. Being a Dalit, they should be manual scavengers or doing such kind of jobs. No, they do not want to do that. Second, they also do not want to imitate the behavior of higher caste. So what happens? They will, or they are marginalized. And here in this case, what happens? They choose a third culture, convert to Buddhism. Like Ambedkar ke leadership mein Mahars, they neither protected their caste identity to be Kshatriya or something like that, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं किया, but they at the same time did not want it to behave like Dalits. Okay, what they did, they converted to Buddhism. Okay, so these are the four grades of acculturation. मतलब ये acculturation in the sense कि ये continuum है. एक जगह पे coercion is minimum and other place the coercion is max. Okay, so one is integration, assimilation, isolation and marginalization. इंटीग्रेशन और एसिमिलेशन में सिंपल सा है, यहाँ पे आप दोनों कल्चर को रिटेन करना चाहते हो, आप अपना कल्चर भी रिटेन कर रहे हो और नए कल्चर को भी लर्न कर रहे हो, दोनों तरफ एटीट्यूड पॉजिटिव है. एसिमिलेशन में यू विल बी लिविंग योर ओन कल्चर एंड इमिटेटिंग द सुपीरियर कल्चर. ओके, जैसे कि इंडिया में जो मिडिल क्लास लोग थे, व्हाट यू कैन से द एलीट क्लास बिफोर इंडिपेंडेंस, दे गॉट वेस्टर्नाइज्ड. Westernized is more like an assimilation because they believe that this Western cultural traits will give them more higher position in the hierarchy because Britishers से ज़्यादा उनके अच्छे contacts बनेंगे and all that stuff. So they were assimilating. Okay, just write this acculturation. Acculturation refers to massive culture change. Refers to massive culture change when it experiences intensive first-hand contact with a more powerful society or culture, with a more powerful society or culture. The subordinate may acculturate, even in absence of force, to survive in the changing world, or for certain material benefits, The subordinate usually borrows the culture of superior group as there is use of coercion. Examples: colonization, conquest, or physical violence, or slavery आप लिख सकते हो. However, this acculturation idea was not favored by several anthropologists. They believe that this is not always like this, means the superior will be coercing and the subordinate will be borrowing. It will not happen like this. There are stages in acculturation, and till a point the subordinate will be borrowing. After that, he will refuse to borrow. So this idea was explained in transculturation. So this is the idea that was given by Fernando Otis, a Cuban anthropologist. So here he says that whenever two cultures come in contact, so what will happen is not only a change that will happen in the single culture, that is the subordinate one, but it will involve the change in both the cultures. सब में contact change आएगा. So it's not like that कि the Britishers when they ruled India, So only Indians adopted the British culture, but a lot of things changed in the British culture as well. So there was a mutual exchange of culture. Although there was hierarchy, but there was a mutual exchange of the elements between the two cultures. So it mainly talks about, although there might be hierarchy, there will be merging of two cultures. Okay, some elements from the subordinate culture has to be adopted by the superior culture as well. So Britishers ने कई सारे vocabulary, कई सारे ideas they adopted from India, okay, in their cultural aspects, and that became the part of British culture or say the culture of England later on. बहुत सारी चीजें इंडिया से कॉपी करके गए, and Indians also borrowed a lot of aspects from their culture. Okay, so this process of transculturation involves adoption, that is some new cultural elements will be adopted, also involves loss of cultural elements, means कुछ elements will eventually be eliminated. For example, Britishers, when they came to India, they abolished slavery, they abolished sati practice. Okay, and we do not talk about sati anymore, or we do not find the incidences of sati. So some new cultural practices were adopted, some were lost, and some new were created. Parliament was created. Okay, several other things got created. So this will happen due to transculturation. So Otis, he talks about certain stages of transculturation. Whenever a superior culture comes in contact with a subordinate, the changes will follow these stages. First one is capture. So in case of capture, the oppressor or the master will enslave the subordinate against its own will. Okay, so master or the colonial power, they will come, they will try to enforce their will, their rule, and they will try to enforce their cultural practices over the subordinate. First one is capture. Second is compromise. In case of compromise, the subject will make adjustment, or subject will basically adjust to the will of the master. Why? Because it's necessary to follow the will of the master in order to survive. अगर नहीं करेंगे तो मार दिए जाएंगे. So that will be the second stage of compromise. So subject has gradually started to accept the will of the master, and that's why all the cultural changes that will follow in this stage will happen, because subject has to adjust in the new rule. The third one is adjustment. This stage starts with the second generation. ठीक है कि एक जनरेशन हो गई, the ruler is ruling. The second generation will respect the authority but will resent any kind of oppression. वो आप colonial master की authority को respect तो करेगा कि हाँ ठीक है वो rule करने दो, but will resent any kind of oppression or use of force against them. And the last is self assertion. In this case, although the subject has adopted other customs, it will self assert itself. वो अपने cultural element को proudly heritage की तरह present करेगा. So this is the four stages, and finally in the next stage, which he mentioned in the later edition, integration would happen. Okay, so it is not means a kind of fusion of two. That is, the subject will be keeping its own culture, at the same time will follow or will borrow selectively certain elements from the master's culture as well. वहाँ पे the subject gets the agency, which elements of the culture has to be chosen and which has to be rejected. So this is what happened in India. It's not like in India, due to colonial rule or coercive rule, we acculturated. No, we transculturated. We compromised, we adjusted, then we self-asserted, and then finally integration happened. That is the fusion of two cultures. We borrowed some elements, but we retained a lot of our own cultural elements. We did not. ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि जैसे कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया में हुआ. So in Australia, अभी जो rule means the mainstream population is the people who have migrated from, say, from Britain. और अभी ऑस्ट्रेलिया का culture is very same to what is there in Britain. कुछ खास नया नहीं है, कुछ खास difference नहीं है. The entire culture of Australia has been wiped out. But here in India, it didn't happen like this. India, it was coercion, but at the end, we self-assert ourselves. And in that case, we were able to retain our identity as well, selectively borrow from the Western culture, as per Fernando Otis. Okay, that's why this transculturation. The term was given by Fernando Otis. It refers to merging and converging of cultures. It refers to merging and converging of cultures. Converging of cultures. This process involves progression from one culture to another culture. Progression from one culture to another culture, comma, loss of some elements of culture, and creation of some new elements. Next paragraph. Transculturation often starts with a conflict. It has four phases. First, capture. That is, the subordinates are captured by the oppressor. Second, compromise. The subject makes adjustment to avoid punishment. And the master adjusts to new environment. Third, adjustment. This phase begins with the second generation of rule. The subject respects the authority, but resents the oppression. Subject respects the authority but resents the oppression. and last is self assertion. The subject although adopts the new customs, but is also proud of one's own heritage. Next last phase, अब ये ओरिजिनली नहीं लिखा था तो इस वजह से फिफ्थ फेज इंटीग्रेशन. The new culture is not merely an uneasy fusion of two cultures, but the subordinate people decide what they absorb. ठीक. Now we'll be talking about ethnocide. So ethnocide is something, the death of a culture. Yes. Self assertion नहीं, self assertion में there is a movement against, ठीक है, जैसे दलित assertion है तो वहां पे एक तरीके का कंप्लीट एंटी बिहेवियर है उनके अगेंस्ट में. दैट इज आप अपनी हेरिटेज को प्रोक्लेम करोगे, ये हमारी हेरिटेज है. ओके, बट ऑपोजिट मींस द नेक्स्ट विल बी कि फाइनली जब वंस दे हैव एक्सेप्टेड दैट assertion, ओके, वंस और योर assertion हैज बीन एबल टू क्रिएट अ मार्क, देन यू बिकम सेलेक्टिव. ठीक है, आपके ये ठीक था, ये कॉपी कर लेंगे. बाकी दीस काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स आर नॉट गोइंग टू वर्क इन आवर कल्चर. Ethnocide, so it means the death of a culture or killing of a culture through use of certain coercive means or mechanisms. ठीक है, तो it can be through various mechanisms. First one is annexation. So एक particular community है, आपने उसके land को capture कर लिया, उनको अपने जैसा बना दिया. So for example, Australia is the case, New Zealand is the case. Okay, annexation. Then by forbidding the ancestral language, आप उनकी language. So for example, the Indian government, that what it's doing. So club schools you might have heard about. So in club schools, NCERT, CBSE की किताबें पढ़ाई जा रही हैं. Now it's a fundamental right to be educated in the mother tongue. मतलब derived right है, not specifically mentioned. But here mother tongue में अगर आप एक ट्राइब की किताब वगैरह और इसके ऊपर कोई एजुकेशन, कोई फंडिंग नहीं है, nothing is being done. So club schools and these kind of schools that are in the tribal areas, they are teaching them NCERTs, and that too in the local language of the state. Maybe Assam with Assamese or Bengal with Bengali. And this is kind of, or a point of time पे when the language is gone, the entire culture is connected to it. So once that language is gone, the culture will also be gone. Okay. Next is criminalizing their traditions. So that's a very classic case of Uyghur Muslims. Now India is also raising the request or that issue on international platforms with respect to Uyghur Muslims. That is, China should be kind, or China should be considerate with respect to Uyghur Muslims. Their rights should be respected. Now once China, what they have done, they have criminalized completely their traditions. अगर आप ऐसा करोगे तो you will be put, and there are detention camps in Xinjiang province, right? Or Uyghur Muslims, they are completely under 100% surveillance, and reading Quran or Arabic literature, that's a criminal offense there. और कुरान वगैरह को जला दिया गया वहाँ पे. Almost all the aspects of their culture has been continuously is being destroyed, and their activities are being under surveillance. Okay, so by criminalizing their tradition, what will happen? You will move them away from their tradition and towards the new tradition. कुछ तो follow करेंगे. So here in the detention camps, the Uyghur children, they are being trained in Chinese. पूरा Chinese culture सिखा रहे हैं. The similar thing is happening in Tibet also. Okay, so next one is destroying their religion. So whenever you must have seen that all the attacks happen, तो सबसे ज़्यादा attacks जब भी कोई एक राजा या एक army would be attacking some new kingdom, the first thing they destroyed was their temples. So if you have seen that movie Troy, so whenever Achilles, the first attack that Achilles does on Troy is जो उनकी जो god की temple थी और वहाँ पे जो head of that god was broken down, means that entire idol was broken down. So by doing this, you are actually, remember, just you can understand it with respect to the Durkheim's idea. So this is a sacred object around which a moral community has been created. Now you destroy the sacred object, or you have attacked the sacredness of this object, and in that case, people's belief in this object and its sacredness shakes up. The consciousness, the solidarity in the community will weaken up, and this first attack will make the entire community a little weak. That हमारे god की मूर्ति टूट गई है, that's a sign of say some inauspicious movement है, unlucky है, and maybe the attack will be more devastating for us. We might get lost, or we might lose the war, or whatever it is. So this is the trick that they use. And finally, when these traditions, they are vanished, okay, so no cultural tradition will exist. So religion is one of the biggest repository of the culture. So this is one thing. Then another example you can understand, that is related to Niyamgiri. So Dongriya Konds. So if that forest would have gone, the religious belief related to that forest would have gone, and उनके पूरे culture की ऐसी की तैसी, means that culture would have gone away. Nothing would have remained about that culture. They would just have been the nomads or landed slavers बन जाते वो, और उनके original cultural practices that would have completely vanished from the face of earth. Okay, because the habitat in which they practice their religion, that is gone now. Okay, next is directly killing the people, जो कि तिब्बत में कर रहे हो. आप डेमोग्राफी को पूरा का पूरा चेंज कर दोगे. ओके, द ओरिजिनल इनहैबिटेंट्स धीरे धीरे पीपल ऑफ चाइना, दे आर मूविंग टुवर्ड्स तिब्बत, दे आर सेटलिंग देयर, एंड जो ओरिजिनल सर्वाइवर्स हैं ऑफ होमलैंड, दे आर डायरेक्टली बीइंग किल्ड और मूव्ड, एंड जिसकी वजह से डेमोग्राफी विल ऑल्टर. एक पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे वहां का कल्चर विल बी गॉन. ओके, एंड दैट वुड, सो अभी देखो कि यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड दैट स्टोरी, द नेक्स्ट लामा, उसको पैदा होते ही किडनैप कर लिया गया था. वी डोंट नो हु दैट नेक्स्ट लामा विल बी, एंड इट्स बिलीव दैट वन लामा वाज किडनैप्ड, और मे बी जब अनाउंस किया गया था तो ही वाज पिक्ड अप बाय द चाइनीज आर्मी, और उसके बदले में एक और बच्चे को बेसिकली चाइनीज ने बोल के भेजा कि यही बंदा है, ये बनेगा नया लामा. Okay, but Dalai Lama refused to, means उनका कुछ process है that the preceding Lama will be appointing the new Lama, और उसको पता चल जाता है कि जब वो नया Lama पैदा होता है कहीं पे. Okay, and he will announce that this person is born and the entire society will take care of him. So they are basically trying to means जो old survivors of homeland है उनको kill करके they are basically trying to kill their own culture, and when the culture is gone, any kind of resistance or revolt against the Chinese establishment will also be gone to it. Okay, so this is what is called as ethnocide. Once we have also talked about ethnocide in the form of Yanomamis, जहाँ पे the children are dying, and when children are dying, so the population is getting extinct at a double rate. Old भी हो रहे हैं और बच्चे भी मरते जा रहे हैं. So when the population will be gone, the entire culture will also be gone. So this is what is called as the एथनोसाइड, आप चाहो तो शॉर्ट नोट लिख सकते हो। मार्जिनलाइजेशन, और देखो यहाँ पे फिर भी जो भी हो रहा है मार्जिनलाइजेशन में, द कल्चरल ग्रुप इज डिसाइडिंग व्हाट टू डू। दे डू नॉट लाइक देयर ओन कल्चर, दे डू नॉट लाइक द न्यू कल्चर, एंड दे विल मूव इन द थर्ड डायरेक्शन। ओके, कि दलित कल्चर की वजह से स्टिग्मा आ रहा है और हम हाई कास्ट कल्चर को फॉलो नहीं करना चाहते क्योंकि वो ऑप्रेसिव है। इन दैट केस दे विल मूव टुवर्ड्स बुद्धिज्म। यहाँ पे तो कोवर्जन की वजह से द एंटायर कल्चर इज बीइंग वाइप्ड आउट। हाँ हाँ, violent eradication of culture, this is what is ethnocide, that's right. Ethnocide refers to violent eradication of an ethnic group's collective cultural identity, of an ethnic group's collective cultural identity. It occurs when a dominant society deliberately sets out to destroy another society's cultural heritage, Example, act of annexation, comma, forbidding the ancestral language, next, criminalizing the traditions, and removing all traces of unique cultural identity, So the last topic for today, how certain communities react to certain repressive changes. So there is one movement which is, or one mechanism that is called as syncretism. Okay, so in syncretism क्या होता है, that mixture will happen, कि अपना भी कुछ रख लिया, उनका भी कुछ कॉपी कर लिया, that is syncretism. So syncretic culture might be formed. So a very good example is that of Tobrianders. So Tobrianders, before the arrival of Britishers, they had a culture or in which the chief used to distribute or organize a feast of yam after every harvest, and this feast was the time when the tribes or indigenous people, they used to have erotic dance festivals. Okay, and this erotic dance festival was kind of wherein there was frequent intimacy between male and female there. Okay, in among the Tobrianders. So when Britishers came, they found it to be too uncivilized as a way of life. Okay, so in that case, they asked their missionaries or the priests, church missionaries, कि आप कुछ करो. So what did these priests do? They introduced cricket there. बोले कि तुम लोग cricket खेलो. Okay, if the chief wants to celebrate something, organize a cricket match there. And Tobrianders, what they did, they changed the cricket match. In that case, the length of the pitch was reduced to the length of the spear throwing game, means जो जितने distance उनको spear फेंकना होता था, which they used to, उतनी बड़ी pitch कर दी. Okay, और second thing what they did, they changed the uniform of the batsman and the teams के uniform थे, that was like as if warriors वाले uniform पहन के जाने लगे, as if they are going for spear throwing match. And third thing, they introduced the erotic dance in the cricket itself. Okay, they said कि यहाँ पे just like we have that cheer girls, okay, cheerleaders in IPL, so in the same way they introduced that erotic dance in the cricket itself, कि वहाँ पे ही करेंगे. अब वो cricket को ही अपने हिसाब से पूरा modify कर दिया. So this is what is called as syncretism. That is, they will adopt their cultural practice, but उसको अपने पूरे taste के हिसाब से, अपने पूरे existing cultural practices के हिसाब से पूरा modify कर देंगे. Okay, और the case of India, we adopted democracy, saying कि सबका एक वोट है, सब equal हो जाएंगे. And the aim for adopting this democracy, one person, one vote, everybody gets the right to vote, universal adult franchise. कि caste और ये सब discrimination खत्म हो जाएगा, everybody will be equal. What happened in India? Caste and religion became the biggest factor for mobilization. लोगों को caste और religion के base पे mobilize कराया गया. And democracy आई तो, but it got modified with the existing cultural traditions. Aim कुछ और था, but what happened? The existing cultural tradition adapted itself. So caste associations बन गए, and then caste-based political party बन गए, और religious-based political parties also started to exist, and they started to contest the election. So this is called as syncretism. And next one is revitalization. So in case of revitalization, what will happen? Whenever a culture sees threat to its own identity, वहाँ पे they will try to revitalize their way of life, or they will try to restore, means अपने heritage को reform करेंगे थोड़ा सा. So several social reform movements, remember, that happened in India, Brahmo Samaj and all those. So they will try to bring in certain reforms in their own culture, and in that case, they will try to restore the collective feeling among the members of their own culture. Okay, that is, revitalize their own culture so that it does not die out. It's still able to compete with the new culture. Okay, now if you see, when Buddhism and Jainism, they arose in India, so what happened? People started to convert to Buddhism and Jainism. Hinduism had to reform its ways. So the reasons, they identified that reasons, कि क्या ऐसा reason है, and जिसकी वजह से people are converting into Buddhism and Jainism. They tried to reform it, and the one most important reform that came was declaring cow slaughter as a sin. Okay, cow slaughter was declared as a sin, and moreover, Buddha was declared as the avatar of Vishnu. So this is how, no matter if you have converted to Buddhism, also you are still a Hindu. Doesn't matter. So that is revitalization. The original culture will kind of reform itself, will change itself. And the third one is rebellion and revolution. So here what will happen? An organized armed resistance will start against the new culture. whenever they feel the culture is feeling some kind of threat. So case, for example, Munda revolt. So Munda revolt is a very classic case of rebellion and revolution against the British culture, and mainly because Mundas felt that the missionaries they are trying to convert the Mundas into Christianity. अब Christianity में change करने को लगा था, उनकी पूरी cultural identity is under threat, and that led to a particular armed resistance against the Britishers. That is the Munda rebellion. And there are several other rebellions, but major और या फिर first war of independence. उसमें one factor was that pigs grease on the bullets, so cartridge of that. So वहाँ पे basically that became one of the reason to revolt against the British rule. So these are the reaction towards the repressive changes. One, they will adopt syncretism, then either they will revitalize, they will try to reform their culture, and third, they will rebel or revolt. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you so much.